My name is Mike Seto. I manage what we call our personal products, which happen to be endpoint devices like phones. But I also, and they include some new stuff that we're looking at Polycom and what we call alliance solutions. So some of the large enterprise guys that we work with, IBM, Microsoft, I have product managers reporting and looking at solutions there. So I get sort of the view from both sides. I get the view from, and I also have an SMB solutions manager, view from SMB all the way up through enterprise. And one of the things well, first of all, the other thing too is I promise I won't go over 20 minutes or so, in deference to Brad here. But also I know I'm between you and some drinks. So what I want to do is sort of cause you to think a little bit in a different way. And that's what I'm going to talk about today, is sort of what we've been pondering as a company, as Polycom. We've been in the visual communications business for some time, as you know, as well as in the voice side. But we've been thinking about it. What are we going to do 3 years from now? And I want you to think about that. What are you going to do 3 years from now? In fact, let me ask you a question. How many of you 3 years from now will be selling the same solution that you sell today? Raise your hand. None. So you all think about change. How many of you are selling your solution today to a younger and younger proprietor? We've been seeing that the people who are buying are now the sons of somebody's business or the daughters of someone's business. And how many of you have used any form of visual communications? That form might be Skype video chat, a little bit. Google Talk, other people use Google Talk. So you're starting to see how many people download videos from YouTube? All right, almost everybody, right? Because video, a lot of people think of video as always two-way communications, but video is really a visual communication. It could be one way. It could be from YouTube. In fact, a lot of people, all of us, certainly I'm sure the folks at Link and other companies, we have a lot of videos on YouTube to show you what our products are and train you. So if you think about all that and you say, okay, what is it that visual communications is doing to this world? And how is mobility? How many of you have smartphones? Everybody, right? All hands go up. And mobility, and what's happening in that cloud? We started out in the premise business. Polycom did. That's what we do. Yet we are looking at the cloud because we're looking at ways to extend your communications capabilities and your customers' communications abilities across broader geographies, and most importantly, to that phone that you carry in your pocket or that device you carry around, because that's how people do business. So one of the things that we're really looking at is what is the payoff? Visual communication, I think all of you, many of you do business face-to-face with your customers, right? And face-to-face does one thing really well. I mean, boy, we started in the audio conferencing business. It is great. It is reliable. It is the best thing you can use until you see the person. And then you have a new dimension of trust, building relationships, and when you have meetings, understanding how your customer or your partner is really going to respond to you by watching the visual cues. So there's a lot of payoff. And as we extend UC beyond just the meeting room, and beyond just you at your desk, into your groups and into other experiences like immersive, which is a high-end type of system, but nonetheless, or mobile, which all of us use, I think what we see is a payoff. We see a payoff that says, in terms of conducting business, right, we can really create more dimension, more cognitive capabilities of the deal that's going down or the subject that you're learning from. I think we all see that. So this is starting to say, okay, visual communication, what is this about? What am I going to do, to kind of perhaps be in that business? And I think we need to think about it a little bit further. If you're already looking at communications and unified communications, I think one of the most important things is now we start to introduce the idea of premise, idea of cloud. We say, what's going to happen is to extend those services, extend visual communications, you're going to have to go through sort of multiple networks. We all had that problem before, right? And in fact, video is one of the biggest problems. I think Skype has solved that problem within their realm, right, of going across multiple networks. So now we're looking at how do we build that out. So in the next 3 years, think about that as people build these networks out, how you can get visual communications across multiple networks into the hands of one customer and into the hands of another customer. I think that's what we need to start thinking about. Because what's going to happen is we're going to start building these out. And Polycom's been involved in a group called the Open Visual Communications Consortium, taking standards and making them standard across networks, right? And then starting to look at how we do converged unified architectures for the premise and the cloud. So it's not, we have to be agnostic. You have to be agnostic. Your customer may want to try different methods depending upon their cost structure, depending upon whether they want to buy CapEx or OpEx, right? And most important, every one of our customers are operating in multiple ways, from their home, certainly on the road, and dropping in the office once in a while. So I think that's another thing to think about in the next 3 years. So we're at this tipping point. Visual communications is going mobile. That's not ever in doubt, right? So Apple introduced the iPad with FaceTime, right? And there's been other types of applications all over the place you can put on your iPhone or your other smartphone. But we think that there's a tipping point happening right now, and it'll happen over the next 3 to 5 years. And that is, of course, mobile device proliferation. But more importantly, network readiness, a sense of cloud delivery, so you can go beyond the premise, outside to someplace else in another part of the world. And then this whole phenomenon about people getting younger and feeling they have to be connected, the Facebook page, right? And this connectedness, I think, is starting to grow. And finally, this generation, that group that's using the social connectedness type of tools, is grown up with video. So just a little bit of journey down this path. So the smartphone obviously paved the way, but now what we're looking at is 64 million tablets by the end of 2011. 64 million. 320 by 2015. And guess what? A lot of people are buying tablets for business. So what started out as something that was entertainment is now becoming a business tool. We just had our customer console, albeit larger companies. Guys like Amgen, and this is no secret, Amgen is deploying like 2,000 iPads today. By the end of 2011, another 6,000 are going to go out. And this is not the only one. McKinsey, right? I can name you all the top 500. And we're talking about 90% of these guys are doing it. And they're doing it as a N+1 right now, which means they still have their desk phone, they still have their PC, but watch as the applications grow how these tablets are becoming the device of choice for many people. Not everybody, but many. We all know, and we're in this business too, that there's going to be the task worker that would use the phone. That's their primary device. But everybody else is BYOD, right? Bring your own device. That's the way it's going. So I encourage you to think about that as you try to scale your business and grow your business. Obviously, everybody knows this. 3G, 4G, and Wi-Fi, these are being ubiquitous. 3G, large proliferation, 165 countries, 5 billion mobile connections. 4G giving you, God knows, all the bandwidth you can eat at some point. Many people are starting to play with that, with the MiFi endpoints, etc. So we're there. We're there in terms of connectedness. Cloud delivery. This is kind of interesting. Some people might say, okay, cloud service providers, they really compete for my business, right? If I'm selling a premise-based PBX today, this guy is trying to eat my lunch. Well, I would encourage you to think about it the other way. Why don't, partnership with these guys? Because they have to evolve their business too, right? How do we partner with these folks? How do we, because this cloud delivery is going to happen. This is, by the way, voice and video business. It's not the total SaaS business. Total SaaS business is even bigger. So what I think what we need to look at is how do we think about different mechanisms of delivery. Social connectedness. We were at Jive World. We just showed some video incorporation into some of the Jive enterprise, not consumer, but enterprise social sites for enterprise, and that might be a service and support site, etc. But definitely with Facebook, I think everybody's seeing that is the new way people interact. So One might even go so far to think that, even things, and they're a good partner of ours, live meeting is just really a small portion of what really people want to do. People want to set on a site like Facebook and do a lot of different things. And we'll see that grow quite a bit more as we look at many of these guys targeting the business user. And of course, video chat's going to be a big part of those sites, the visual communication aspect. So now you're going to have friends, but you can really talk to them live, and many of you are doing that today. So the guys who are starting, the people who are starting business are getting younger, and they're being raised on video, not on TV like I did, but on video, right? Which means interactivity. And what's important is that they're using interactivity anywhere they can find it. Whether it's, one-way activity would be YouTube, but interactivity meaning mobile traffic. So video is going to be 66% of the networks by 2015. So I encourage you to think about that, because basically we've got to say, well, if that's the case, we, Polycom included, how do you deliver all that stuff? And I think we start to think about the delivery options. Today, we're in premise. Both of us drive most of our business from premise equipment. But tomorrow, we need to look at how do we build a unified architecture? How do you build your offer, your business offer, across other types of delivery mechanisms, whether they be private cloud or public cloud, right? So one of the things that we've been working on is basically how do we do that? How do we connect the dots? All these endpoints, whether they're ours or someone else's, it doesn't matter. How do we connect those endpoints to the applications that are going to be used, whether it's presence, call control, web conferencing, video collaboration, mobility, and social networking. And how do we connect that to the core networking? So what we've done is on our side, and this is something I would encourage you to think about because there's a lot of activities going on. There's Asterisk SCF, right? There's a lot of activities in saying what is going to be a platform strategy that everyone can offer to the folks that want to use visual communications, right? And that platform strategy from our standpoint is real presence platform. So I don't want to advertise about this. What I want to talk to you about is functionality, because I think you need to think about functionality, right? So one of the things that we've looked at is what do we need to do to support these kinds of applications? Well, from the visual communication standpoint, we need to support that through sort of visual collaboration. What does that mean? Today that means a video bridge. But tomorrow that's going to mean much more than a video bridge. There's going to be different ways of working through that. And then how do we manage those resources? Because people, if you think about, right, 66% of the mobile traffic in 2015 is going to be video traffic. Guess what? You need a lot of capability in the cloud or on your premise, either place. And then, of course, virtualization. I mean, so that we can, in fact, run on much more standardized infrastructures and scale easily. As well as universal access and security. That's the other part. I think security, the big hit on Skype all the time. We heard it just 2 days ago at our user conference, is that it's just, there's not enough security there, guys. We're not going to adopt tools like that. And then last, which is becoming really important, if you talk about social, you talk about applications that you would use, even for a small business. If they want to just train new employees, they're going to want to record something, store it, and archive it. And then as the company gets bigger, they're going to store a bunch. Then they're going to have to search on it. They're going to have to go find 50,000 videos, just like you do on YouTube. They have millions. So I would encourage you to think about your business needs to expand beyond just the real-time communications, but into managing, right, store and forward visual communications, because I think that's going to be a big part of anybody's business. So that's what we're trying to look at. That's what we're trying to build out, and I encourage you to think about that. And so what that does is it empowers something what we call the real-time visual communications cloud. Now that doesn't necessarily mean the cloud is all the cloud. It means it's part of premise equipment too. It's all one big piece of resources that somebody can conduct visual communications. So think about it that way. And one of the things that's going to go on is you're going to have, you're going to have call control or you're going to have video control. Either way, on the premise, you're going to have a lot in the cloud. And so one of the things that we're working with service providers, and I encourage you to think about that, even if you're not a service provider or even thinking about it, is a couple of things. One is on-demand self-service, because that really helps, that really tells you what technology you need. If you're going to have self-service, you need portals. Well, not only portals, but how do you connect? What protocols do you support? What kind of numbering scheme do you plan out, right? There's a lot of plumbing inside of these things. We're looking at, also obviously mobile location independent, right? So this whole idea of resource pooling, can a small business who is a part of a collective have their resources be part of a service provider's cloud as well, and so that in fact you have a good set of resources that are location independent for that small business person who's traveling across the country. Okay? Virtualization, we talked about that and always on. And then ubiquitous open access. This is where the standards come in. This is where a lot of the access points come in, and that's what we need to do. Polycom as vendors, others as well. And how do we do that? But you will need to know how you want to use these access methods. So really that comes down to, okay, if we start to build out this sort of ubiquitous cloud, really what's the opportunity for you and many of, besides being in the cloud, and that is really in the area of mobility. And that's because tablets are exploding. That's because 90% are video enabled with a front-facing camera, right? So now we're seeing, before everybody was thinking about just taking pictures, right? Or taking that video on the other side, but now we want to see you because you want to interact with somebody on that screen. And most of all, again, I think Apple's going to lead the way. They're going to drive enterprises to really think about this differently. And what happens with that is that starts to drive the rest of the market. So things that you should think about is, and even we are, thinking about where are we going? Where's the new endpoint going to be? It's still, for many people, going to be a phone. But now it's going to be augmented for those people who are truly mobile in a tablet. So video clients, I think, are important. Think about that. Think about how that will help your business. And a lot of video control apps, and I won't get into that, but that'll come. These are things that you can download from the stores. And then, of course, the other mobile piece is your laptop. So that's another area of interest. So I think if you think about the future, and again, I asked the question, what would you be selling 3 years from now? I would venture to say many of you would be selling hybrid capabilities. That means you sell some premise equipment, and you'll be working with a service provider with some offer of the cloud, and you'll be offering that user a plethora of endpoints. Some of them are going to be phones, but many of them are going to be in the mobile space, right? So as you know, Polycom's doing that. We put our toe in the water. We announced these clients for Samsung, Apple, and Motorola at CTIA just 3 weeks ago now. And believe me, CTIA, as you know, is a show for all the mobile service providers. It really was something. It's changing people's thinking about how they use their devices. The new conference room is your park car. It's not you driving with this thing, but it's your park car, because in fact we had a staff meeting just yesterday, and 2 of our people were in their parked cars, and we were making sure they weren't touching the driving wheel. But that's what they were doing. They had iPads, and they were in their parked cars, and that was the new conference room, right? So I would venture to say that's one thing I should think about, you should think about. And then beyond that, once you get into that, then what are the value-added services you can look at? Brad talked about vertical markets. There's a lot of vertical market kind of applications in the mobility space. I don't even want to go through all this, but you can read this. I mean, you can tie the lawyers to the cloud, and then you can tie other people to the cloud, whether they be automotive manufacturers or dealerships, et cetera. And you can start to look at delivery. So the partnerships you will have in 3 years from now, again, if you're not developing that app, you'll probably be partnering with somebody to develop that app, right? So what's in it for us? What's in it for you? I think the thing that I wanted to do today was just stimulate your thinking. Stimulate your thinking about supporting SIP video endpoints, not just SIP audio, but SIP video. Incorporating visual communications, mobility clients, and content in your offer. And it's a broad statement. I know it's so high level, you're saying, well, what can I act on? But I think the key message here is there's going to be a lot to act on because of the vertical markets, like what Brad was talking about. And you need to go through and say, I'm going to specialize here with this kind of offer. And of course, real-time communications in your platform. So think about business social in your platforms. I know that the Digim folks are thinking through that as well. And obviously, media framework. And that will work with Digim as well on the scalable communications framework. So that is, obviously just in its beginning, its infancy, but, architecturally, it looks like a great thing where you can scale, and that's the kind of architecture you need to go premise and cloud, right? And then I think most of you will not be in the service provider business, so I think you need to really start thinking about partnering with some guys. And don't look at them as just competitors to your business today, but look at them as friends in the future, because they're going to have to find ways to connect easily as well. So that's all I had. Wanted to stimulate your thinking. I think actually I'm right on time. It's like 4:20 or so. I can take some questions if we have other. But think visual, because that's where the world is going. That's where your kids are already there. My kids are there. And those are going to be the people we're going to be selling to in the next 5, 10 years. Any questions?